Hi guys, so today we are going to be finishing the last section. Isn't that exciting? It is about information processing and living things. It's probably not the most exciting section, and there are some activities that you'll be able to do at home or in class, if we were in class, to test this. But what I want to let you know is that I'm just going to go through a lot of information that maybe are things you haven't thought about before. So just kind of try to keep an open mind as we're going through this. Okay. So what is information processing? So it's basically how your body takes information around it and decides what to do with it. So basically, we are made of a whole bunch of different organ systems that we just talked about. And those different organ systems need to work together and communicate with each other so that your body can function. And they also need to respond to their environment. So our body, as animals, we are animals, has a lot of sensory receptors that send messages to our brain. And then our brain decides whether we should have an immediate behavior, meaning do we react immediately, or do we just store that information for later? So we store this information in, we process this information using a network of cells called neurons. The neurons basically are your nerve cells. Okay, and remember I told you the nerve cells are long and branching like that. They send electrical signals, and they send them very quickly. So the brain has billions of neurons that connects with thousands of other cells. Your nervous system has two major components. You either have the central nervous system, which is right here, your brain and your spinal cord, or you have your peripheral nervous system. And you've probably heard of like peripheral sight before, which is like the part of your sight where you can see kind of like on the side of your face. Peripheral nervous system are all the nerves that branch throughout your body that are connected to your central nervous system. So there's three different categories of sensory stimulations that activate your sensory system. So the three categories are mechanical, chemical, or electromagnetic. And we're going to talk about what those three are. They don't necessarily always work separately. Sometimes they can all work together. Okay, so mechanical. So for example, if you're sitting on your couch and a big, huge truck drives by and your house kind of vibrates a little bit, your body can sense that mechanical movement. If you are laying on the couch and your brother sits on you, you can feel that physical pressure. Or if you stand up and you step on a tack, you can feel that physical pressure. Those are all mechanical stimuli. Chemical stimuli are things like when your body can sense different taste by your taste buds, or can notice different odors or pheromones based on what you smell. And sometimes you'll react to it by enjoying it. Sometimes you'll react to wanting to go away. Sometimes it will bring a memory to you. You might not notice that now because you're still kind of young, but a scent later on in your life, maybe a scent you haven't smelled in 20 years, and it'll bring you back to a time that you didn't even realize that you remember that scent. I'll give you an example of that. When my kids were really, really little, we went to the Please Touch Museum, and it was like when it first opened. And there was the Alice in Wonderland exhibit, and part of that exhibit I walked through, and there was the rose garden, which isn't really roses, it's fake, but the activity is that you pick up a fake paintbrush and you paint the roses and they become pink. And when you're standing there, all of a sudden I smelled the scent of rose. And I didn't even remember that that was a scent that my grandma wore, but it totally flooded back all these memories of my grandmother. So sometimes different scents can stimulate different memories. It was kind of cool. I called my mom. I said, what is that rose scent? And then we had a conversation about it. It was kind of cool. All right, electromagnetic stimuli. So this has to do with generally light and heat. So our body can sense changes in light, like if you're in a dark room and you go outside and it's light out, or if you go near a heat source like say a grill or an oven, you're going to notice that heat. All right, so let's go over these answers. I'm going to read them all before we pick the correct answer. So in animals, which system is responsible for processing information from the environment? The skeletal, nervous, muscular, or digestive? Answer is nervous. 33. Light-sensitive neurons in the eye respond to which type of sensory stimuli? So light. Which ones were light? Was it mechanical, electromagnetic, chemical, or physical? The answer is electromagnetic. 34. Hair cells in the ear respond to which type of sensory stimuli? So these are going to sense vibration. So which one sensed the vibrations? That was mechanical. 34 is mechanical. 35. Plants release pheromones that attract bees so that the bees will pollinate them. Pheromones are examples of which type of sensory stimuli? And that's going to be chemical. All right. So basically, you guys already know this. We have 5 main senses: see, hear, smell, taste, touch. What are the 5 main organs that help us to do that? That would be your hand, your tongue, your ear, your nose, and your eyes. All right, so you don't have to memorize this chart, but just to give you some information, a sensory receptor is a nerve cell or a bundle of nerve cells that interact with stimuli and send signals to the brain for processing. They are found all over the body and protect us from harm. So we have pain receptors that help us to detect pain. We have temperature receptors that help us to sense cold or heat. We have mechanoreceptors, which help us to sense touch or pressure and even balance. So sometimes people will have difficulty with balance, especially as they get older. And that might be because their mechanoreceptors aren't working as well as they should be. Sometimes it has to do with their ears and sound. And then also, too, as you get older, you have difficulty hearing sound as well. Chemoreceptors are basically associated with our sense of taste and smell because that's a chemical signal. And then photoreceptors, because photo means light, they help us to sense light. Okay. We also have other receptors. You don't need to know these as much, but I'll just point out some of the interesting ones. Hunger receptors tell us when we're hungry. Hydroreceptors. Oh, that one you probably notice, especially in the summer where all of a sudden you come out and you're like, oh, it's pretty humid and the air seems thick. This one I think is interesting. Position receptors allow humans to sense where body parts are. So close your eyes. Do you know where your hands are? Do you know where your feet are? You do, because you have position receptors that allow you to kind of remember that. Okay. Or sense that. All right. So basically how a nervous system functions. There is a signal from that sensory receptor, and then it is integrated, meaning that sensory signal is somehow processed, like what should we do? And then there's an output. So the signal basically sends it to an organ, which can be a muscle or a gland in your body, and say, what should we do? So it's basically your body receives the signal, it's integrated and processed, and then there's an output. Like, what should we do? Should we run away? Should we send chemicals? Should our body send chemicals to the area? Should we sneeze? What should we do? Okay, so that's how basically the 3 steps. All right, so basically what's happening here, if there's a sensory input from the eye, it's integrated through the brain. So we see something, our body integrates it, and then there's an output, and our leg says to run. Okay, we see something dangerous, our brain senses it, our legs say to run. But there's also something called a reflex. And sometimes a reflex happens when we need a quicker response. And so that will bypass the brain. How that works is basically the input signal just travels a shorter distance and it just goes to the spinal cord. So we have a reflex in our knee, which sometimes you get that tested when you go to the doctors. Basically, they hit you with that little thing, which I can't think what it's called right now, or they tap your knee and they're testing your reflex to make sure that to make sure that that signal is going right to your spinal cord and telling your leg to move. So that's almost an instantaneous response. Funny story, maybe not that funny to you, but when I was a little kid, I didn't realize that they were testing my reflexes. So I used to always kick my leg on purpose. So they must have thought I had amazing reflexes. Don't do that. Let the doctor do what they're supposed to do and test your reflexes. All right, so this is different. So this nervous function integrates through the brain. You see something, your brain has to process it, and you have to decide your body decides what to do. This is quicker. A reflex happens very quickly because the message doesn't go to the brain. It goes just to the spinal cord. So that's why you sometimes hear about people say, like, your body reacted so quickly. That's a reflex. All right, let's go over these answers. 36. You place your hand over the hot stove for a brief second. Which of the following represents a normal nervous system response? Because this is so long, I'm going to tell you just the answer right now so you can write it down. It is A. It's a pain receptor because you put your hand on the hot stove. The message goes to your spinal cord, and then there is a motor output that says, hey, move your hand. Don't leave it there. If you didn't have those pain receptors in your hand would stay there, and that wouldn't be good. So the answer to 36 is A. 37. Which of the following is an example of a reaction to the stimulus involving brain processing? Okay, this one has to go through your brain. So this isn't going to be just to your spinal cord. So we already know it's not going to be removing your hand from a hot stove. And it's not going to be this one. It's you're seeing something flying at your face. Your brain processes what to do. So the answer is B. So your brain is involved in this one. You catch a hockey puck that's flying at your face. You see it. It goes, your brain processes what to do. You put your hand up to catch it. So the answer to 37 is B. And that is it. I'm going to stop here.